Faces of Abortion is the only television program of its kind that shares the powerful, real-life stories of women, men, and families who have suffered through the destruction of abortion. You will be hearing powerful stories from women and men and families throughout the nations. Faces of Abortion touches lives and changes hearts in over 115 nations. You will also be given practical steps on how you can end abortion.
So it just overwhelmed me. And I thought the only way to escape the pain was to take my life.
I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to have my own children.
It brings heartache. It brings hurt.
And I knew they were tearing my baby apart.
I remember the cold feeling of the room.
I remember laying there and I just said to myself that I will never forgive myself for what I'm doing.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and I'd like to introduce Alan Parker, the president of the Justice Foundation, Clayton Trotter, general counsel of the Justice Foundation, and our special guest, Diane.
Cindy, this week we are going to hear from Diane and Bridget about abortion as they experienced it in some of the most profound and compelling testimonies that I've ever heard.
And now we would like to hear Bridget's story in her own words.
Hello, my name is Bridget Storm, and I'm here today to share my experience with you to let you know that abortion hurts women. I was in a marriage where my husband didn't want children. So when I announced to him one day that I wanted to have a baby and I was pregnant, my husband strictly told me that that was unacceptable for this marriage and I would have an abortion. I would do anything to keep this marriage. I was truly in love with this man, and I made the decision to have an abortion. I made the choice to allow someone else not to make any more choices. And for the next 20 years, I silently suffered for what I call abortion madness. Through the rest of the marriage, until the marriage lasted, there were 4 more abortions. I ended up murdering 5 of my precious babies. And then the torture began. I suffered with a twisted mind and a mangled spirit for the next 20 years. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what to think. I just knew I didn't belong anywhere. I didn't fit in anywhere anymore. I started doing drugs very heavy. And the alternative to supporting my drug habit was crime. I tormented my community, and my life became a nightmare. This went on for 20 years. I was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Prison is not a nice place to be. There are women who are suffering silently in prison like I myself did for years after years from what I call abortion madness. One day, a ministry came through, Oil of Joy. There was a seminar offered to the inmates about abortion and the recovery from abortion. I signed up for this class, and it was probably the best thing I ever did. I remember thinking back when I asked the doctor during my first abortion, how long will this take? And he said 7 minutes. He lied. It took 20 years. That abortion has lasted 20 years. Through this class, I learned to take responsibility for the murder of my 5 precious children. And when I took responsibility, there was a freedom with that. And then I faced a moral dilemma of what I had done. And then the recovery process began. And it was a process. We named our children, we gave them characters, and we actually, before the seminar ended, we had a morning service for our children. And at this morning service that we had, it was there and then that I saw the clarity and the freedom that God had given me. For 20 years I had suffered with a twisted mind and a mangled spirit, and God had finally set me free. I'm very thankful for this class. In prison, there's an entire subculture who suffers silently with abortion madness. They're being released in your communities daily, coming out, suffering silently, and repeating the same cycle of drug abuse and crime because they just don't know. We didn't know. And through programs like this and Oil of Joy Ministry, they're educating the prison population, and your communities will be safer. I want to thank you for listening to my story, and I want to ask that you call the toll-free numbers and you listen to us and share our experiences with us and make a choice to allow your children to make choices. I thank you.
What a powerful story we've just heard from Bridget, and we want to encourage you, if that story has touched your heart, if that sounds like your story, to call our toll-free helpline. You know, Alan, I just cannot get over the fact of what she talked about, of the abortion madness that's going on in our nation.
It's so true, Cindy. And the doctor told her it'd be over in 7 minutes, and instead it lasted 20 years for her and took her on such a downward spiral. And I've heard this from so many women that I've come to the conclusion there's really only two responses once you've had the abortion. It takes many forms, but you either deny that still small voice inside you saying it was wrong, or eventually you say, I was wrong, and you have to turn to God and say, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me.
And what she went through when she was talking about the repeat abortions and the abuse that she went through, that was, to me, Clayton, just hearing about that abuse that she went through even in her own marriage.
Well, that's one of the things that really struck me was her husband put her in that place.
Yes.
By demanding that she not have any children. And you know, the Christian model is a husband's supposed to lay down his life for his wife the way Christ loved the church. And to tell a woman in a marriage that she can't have children and that you must kill your children if you want to stay in this marriage, it's absolutely abominable. It's horrible. And
it shows the lie that abortion is not a woman's choice.
That's right.
It was the man's choice for his convenience and his desire.
And we've heard, of course, we've heard that over and over and over again of how that happens.
And looking at her, I looked at her and I was so taken aback because she seemed as an everyday woman in our nation that I would have never expected that to have happened to her.
And that's the other thing that it really impressed me about her is I could see her coming out of the pew of just about almost any church in this city.
Yes.